All right, we're here for our second case study of our event. I'm pleased to be joined by three individuals from either Veritone or from the San Francisco Giants. I'll introduce them right now. We have Paul Hodges. He's the Vice President of SVG Productions. We have Brad Martins. He's the Director of Media Systems and Workflow for the San Francisco Giants. And we have Logan Ketchum. He's the Director of Sales and Strategic Partnerships for Veritone. So, guys, I'm wearing my only shirt that's orange and black for the occasion. Thanks for joining. This should be a great conversation about San Francisco Giants baseball and digitization of content. So, we'll get started real quick. Just kind of give a little teaser of what we're going to be discussing. You guys have a very, very steep history, either in New York and then when you guys shipped over to the Bay, whether it's Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, and then you get the Barry Bonds years and the chase for the home run record, and then you get three titles in what, 2010, 2012, 2014. Every even year seems to be the Giants year. A whole history that you guys were trying to bring some preservation to. So, Brad, I'll throw it to you, and you can kind of tee us up for the conversation, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I would say, is the opportunity came up several years back where we had just a rich history of media content, analog media content, sitting on shelves, and kind of stored in various places throughout the Bay Area. Some were in storage pods in the East Bay, some were in storage lockers in San Francisco, and it was essentially just a pile of media that was deteriorating, and some towards the end of its life. So we wanted to find a way to digitize that and preserve it for future generations of fans to be able to enjoy that content. And so it was a project that we coined the Legacy Project, and I think we have a little video clip here to give you an introduction on that.
A legendary home run heard over the radio. An impossible catch captured on a single reel of film. Or a final out broadcast into our homes. These stories are our legacy. A legacy that, until recently, had become increasingly difficult to preserve.
When we were accumulating all these tapes, we'd often look at this wall of videotape and say, what in the heck are we going to do with all this tape? But the fact that all those games, interviews that we did with early Giants vision are all being saved. It's pretty remarkable.
If something's narrated by John Miller, you can't go wrong. Legendary broadcaster. So thanks, John, for kind of giving us a nice little teaser of what we're going to dive into. Sounds like a big dilemma, kind of having all this history, either in an archaic form as in tape, and bringing it into kind of the future with, kind of having a way to preserve it for years to come. So let's dive deeper into that. You mentioned a little bit about the dilemma that you guys faced, but Paul and Brad, what was the dilemma you guys were facing before, even before the pandemic started? You guys wanted to go into a new modernization phase. I say that 10 times fast. You guys wanted to go into a new era. So kind of go into the challenges and what you guys did to kind of bring it up to speed.
Yeah, I think not as much as modernization as preservation, right, of this history, so that we could also utilize that content. As you mentioned, that there's a rich history there, and our diehard fans are yearn for this stuff, and with the club's ability to be able to create content and post it themselves on YouTube channels and social media, there's a desire to feed that beast, if you will, and that we were just sitting on a bunch of content that we had no way to utilize, essentially, because it was sitting on shelves and our tape decks were deteriorating. So, part of this whole project was how do you get it from the tape shelves or the storage lockers that Brad was mentioning and into an editor's bin was going to require a lot of steps. And then when I think me and Brad, when we started to get into this project, started to know that there was guessed about 10,000 assets, I think that we thought in the beginning, and quickly grew to probably over 16,000 assets, from film to 3/4 inch audio cassettes. I mean, we had everything. And I think then the challenge to digitize this was in front of us, which found a vendor got all that stuff digitized, and then we were faced with the challenge of how do you get the metadata associated to this, because essentially you just moved it off the shelf and into a digital format, but we still knew nothing about what we had in our possession. Me and Brad kind of like were punching the numbers and estimated that with that amount of content, if we paid 16 interns for a year straight, we probably could get the metadata we needed to be associated to these clips, so that we could have our editors and producers know what we're finding. But that obviously led us down a different path, one that was much more modern than having interns log. And that's where we came across and started working with Veritone through a great partnership.
Yeah, so Logan, I want to bring you into the conversation. What were some of the features that Veritone was able to supply these two gentlemen and the organization to kind of make this a reality?
Yeah, no, and just to kind of go back to Paul, kind of what he was saying quickly is, I think, for the preservation project, it was first, how do we sort of preserve this content for the long term, right? Just so that we have it. And then, I think, the next kind of thought process is how do we then activate that content? And, clearly metadata is a prerequisite to activate any corpus of media. And in certain cases throughout the archive, and Brad can kind of dive deeper into this, there is some structured metadata associated to the different files that are being processed by their digitization vendor, and metadata being added. And so it was important for us to look and understand sort of, first and foremost, what types of structured metadata were and is available to our group, and then use that to kind of inform our process on how can we use AI and Veritone's aiWARE operating system to add additional and incremental metadata to important files and parts of the archive, so that Brad and Paul and their team, as well as the digital team and social team, can quickly identify, search, discover, and activate that content, whether it be putting into a new production for something on digital, etc. And I think the other fortunate thing, and we can kind of get into sort of when COVID took effect, is we were able to provide them not only the AI services, but also through our digital media hub application, which is a cloud-based asset management system, more like a virtualization layer for all of their content, including the archive, that interacts and interplays with the different systems they use from an editing perspective, as well as sort of on-prem asset-based management or production asset management systems. And in doing so, fortunately, we were able to provide Brad and really his team with external cloud-based remote access to this content at a very critical moment in time, where during the pandemic, obviously we're still going through it, hopefully kind of at the tail end, folks had a little bit more time to engage with content, whether it be long form on Netflix and things like that, or short form digital, TikTok even. And so when you have that increased sort of opportunity to and demand, it was fortunate that they kind of could match that from a supply perspective, and be able to fulfill the different sort of fragmentation in the media space around consumption habits and those types of things, to make sure that through a weird sort of MLB season, they were able to stay top of mind, and really engage those fans in new and compelling ways with some historical content that they can share with you they previously hadn't discovered. So it was great for their team to see those things, and I think it went a long way with the fans in 2020, and I know that we've got some interesting things planned for the next season.
Right. Logan, you bring up a good point. The pandemic happened, but these two individuals were already planning for this even before the pandemic happened. They were being proactive, had the foresight to see this dilemma, and were working towards that end goal. So, the pandemic allowed these gentlemen to flex their muscles a little bit about what you provided them and the infrastructure that they had. So Brad, I'll give you the floor. You have a lot of examples of this kind of workflow in action. You want to give us a rundown of what you guys are doing in the Bay?
Yeah, it's the digital media hub is the way I describe it to people. It's like our own personal Giants YouTube vault, in that you get that instant access, easy user interface, so that our editors and producers, despite the various ranges of technical aptitude, can navigate our content easily. The kind of categories when you go in searching for stuff is, you might just be wanting to look at certain eras of content. So you can go in decade by decade and kind of pull media out that way. You might find something that you didn't know existed. In that particular instance, we had maybe a 15 to 20 minute tape that was Willie Mays down at our spring training facility, probably in the 70s or 80s, teaching hitting instructions to all of our rookies. And it's, that was something that was sitting on the shelf. We didn't even know we had. The tape label might not have even necessarily been exactly what it was. It's when you uncover gems like that, it makes the entire project worth it. Even with that file digitized, you still wouldn't have necessarily found it without an easy access through the cloud. And then kind of on the flip side, you go into a platform and you want to see what we have of a certain thing, whether you're searching for a certain player. Last season, unfortunately, there's several key members of Major League Baseball passed away, and so our regional sports network reached out to us and said, "Hey, do you have any footage of these guys?" One that comes to mind was Hall of Famer Lou Brock, and I, not even a Giant, but let's search the system and see where he comes up in the media that we have loaded. And he had visited the broadcast booths at Candlestick in the '90s with our broadcasters back then. So kind of being able to access that content literally in seconds just by typing his name in, is what brings value. And then kind of the last little anecdote that I'll share is today what I'm physically working on, with the unfortunate news that came out recently of Tony Bennett being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Our director of productions reached out, to kind of have the foresight. He has a rich history, obviously, international, fame, but also has a deep connection to San Francisco and the Giants. And so searching the platform and finding his performances that he had at Candlestick, he sang opening day in 1993 at Candlestick. He performed the national anthem and God Bless America during the 2002 World Series. And he also performed in, I think, the NLCS in 2012. And so just, trying to wrap your mind around how would you find that content sitting on a tape on the shelf. You have to know the dates that he performed. Maybe that's actually not even available to search online when he performed at AT&T Park or Pac Bell Park in 2002. And so, just being able to type his name into the platform and pull up 85 different assets. That's all transcriptions, times he was mentioned, facial recognition, if that profile exists on him. And again, work that would take days or weeks to find, or even just be flat out impossible. I can do it in the matter of a couple hours and pull out all this content and kind of populate it for our editors when they need access to it. So it's a great tool for us.
It saves a lot of headaches, and your fingers don't have to go like this to look through the files manually, like people probably had to do years ago. Paul, I want to bring you back in real quick. From a content and production kind of standpoint, with Veritone's infrastructure in place, from an educational tool, growing the fan base for years to come, where do you think this is a kind of a game changer for future generation?
Yeah, I mean, again, just like the stories that Brad was throwing out there, I think just us being able to have this content, and then me personally having worked at the Giants since 2000. I think one of the cool parts for me is, we were using the same batch of content over and over and over and over again for all these different Hall of Famers or alumni. So the opportunity to see some of this stuff after we digitize it in a higher quality, or to see some of this content from different angles that we had never seen before. I mean, it's it's fulfilling for myself to also, I guess, as you bring up educating future fan base, there's new stuff. People want to see new material on this stuff, not the same things that they always see. So again, it was amazing just to be able to have the opportunity to digitize all of these assets, but it's another thing to be able to, as Brad just described, type in Tony Bennett and find stuff immediately, rather than have to, as you described, your hands hurting, or me and Brad could probably tell you many stories where we sat there arguing over what tape actually may have had that one certain clip on it that you had to shuttle all the way to the end. Those days are gone. I think that it just opens up, frees us up, allows us, like producers and the editors and everyone on the creative side, to kind of be more open with telling stories, I guess, and not feel like you're constrained to that one clip that maybe lived on that one tape. I think, as Brad described with Tony Bennett, there's 85 assets now that we can explore, we can get creative, and we can tell better stories than we were doing before.
Right. So it increases content value, but also solves a lot of arguments in the office about whether this pitch happened or whether it didn't. Gentlemen,
I don't think it'll ever solve that. I think me and Brad still find ways to have that happen.
Well, hopefully the solution helps out a lot more. Great story to tell, and for future generations, a lot of Giants fans will continue to learn about the legends of the game. Gentlemen, Logan, Brad, Paul, really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us. Brad and Paul, good luck with the upcoming season. Spring training's around the corner, and Logan, keep on doing great work for teams that are looking to kind of push, innovation and get to the next level of content.
Thanks. Appreciate the time.